Hi, welcome to a new video, and for this one, this is going to be a little bit unusual, but I thought it would be quite timely. So in 2 days I have a new exhibition opening, so I wanted to really talk about exhibiting your work, because it's something, if you are a photographer, I do feel there is a lot of value in doing it, but it is not necessarily an easy process. This will be the 4th time I've exhibited my work, and this is going to be I think the biggest exhibition, certainly the longest one that I've put on so far, that I can recall. Pretty sure it is anyway. So I just wanted to talk you through the steps involved in this from beginning to end, and we might have an update in a few weeks' time as to how the opening went, because as I say, 2 days' time it's opening. Right, so with that said, let's kick things off. Okay, so if you are going to exhibit your work, the very first thing that you need to do is have a venue, have somewhere where you exhibit your work. Now, I've been quite fortunate in that the town I live in has a very vibrant art scene associated with it, and they are quite open to photography from that point of view. And I know a lot of the people, or a reasonable number of the people involved in it. So try and get to know the venues that are in your local town, wherever you live. Get to know the people involved in it. Go along to exhibitions, go along to opening events. Go and talk to the people in these venues, and inquire, ask about, would they be open to holding an exhibition, or is there an exhibition that's going to be happening that you could put a piece in that may work from that point of view? Because, putting on a solo exhibition, that's a big step. Being able to contribute a single piece or a number of pieces to a joint or a collaborative exhibition, that's much easier, and the prep work involved is a lot more straightforward in that regard. I'm in this video talking primarily about solo exhibitions because they're definitely the most challenging, but a lot of what I'm going to talk about would apply to putting pieces into joint exhibitions. Okay, so yeah, get to know the venues, the kind of locations and places that hold art exhibitions, and don't rule out the more uncommon, because I personally, this will be my 4th exhibition. I've never exhibited in a formal art gallery setting. I'm yet to do that. I've exhibited in twice, once solo, once a single piece in a mixed exhibition at a local art shop, art gallery and tattoo studio called the Trinity Collective, which is in Swindon. So that's probably the closest to a formal art gallery, but it's anything but formal in its approach. And it's not a sole dedicated gallery space, and I think it's better for it, but that's another argument. Look for local independent coffee shops. An awful lot of them will put art up, and you can put your art out through that. An increasing number of pubs and bars will also hold art exhibitions, and the one that I've got coming up is exactly that. It's in a venue called the Hop Inn in Swindon, which is a pub. It's an independent craft beer pub, and they put on a lot of art exhibitions and have got a lot of floor space and wall space to exhibit. So I'm really excited about that one. Go in, talk to people, ask them. I was fortunate with this latest one that I actually got asked by the venue, but that takes time to build up, So put yourself out there, go to exhibitions, talk to people, and once you've got a venue, once you've got somewhere that you're going to exhibit your art, make sure you know it. Make sure you know the layout. Make sure you know the size. Get measurements for it. Now, the Hop-In are absolutely wonderful because online they actually have a downloadable hint sheet which gives you the dimensions of every wall that you can use, and this is invaluable when it comes to your planning and preparation a little bit later on that we'll come on and talk about. So once you've got that venue squared away, make sure you know what the venue's like, what space you've got, what lighting is like, the lowest point you can hang pictures, the highest point you can hang pictures by walls, all that kind of things, and agree a date and a time, not just for the opening, but when you can go in and set up and things like this. Okay, so once you've got a venue that is going to give you an exhibition or exhibition space, you then have what for me is one of the hardest points, which is finding a theme, finding a coherent theme that will allow you to exhibit your work and pull it all together. So for solo exhibitions, this is far harder than it is for submitting a piece or pieces into a joint exhibition, because with joint exhibitions, very often there's a theme that you have to follow, or it's completely open and you can pick anything you want. So you only need 1, 2 or 3, maybe a few more pieces that hang cohesively together. When you're looking at putting on a solo exhibition, then you're looking generally upwards of 30 pieces that you have to try and curate and pull together. And I'm not going to say I've always been successful at doing that, because I don't believe I have. Some I've been better than others. Now, in almost all cases, and I'm going to come on to talk about an exception to this in a moment, but in almost all cases, pick a single theme and work with that theme, okay? And make sure that your images tell a story around that. So as an example of this, my very first exhibition I laid on was I picked up the cameras again after quite a long hiatus. Back in the early 90s, I shot a lot of local bands on film, and towards the end of 2022, start of 2023, I started shooting local bands again on digital. So I put together kind of a contrast. It was all Swindon bands playing in Swindon, but one was from the 90s, and that was purely all in black and white. Had no choice, they were all shot on black and white film. And then contrasted that with images from 2022 and 2023, all shot digitally, and they were all in colour. So it had that contrast, and that gave me an idea of how I could lay it out in the space as well, with the past and the present, which venues still existed, all of those kind of things. And it gave people something to look at, to latch onto and talk about, and it worked extremely well from that point of view. I tried another exhibition where I looked at just black and white work, but the images within it, with hindsight, I don't think were cohesive enough themselves. Black and white just as a medium isn't enough to hang things together, and that was my fault. I don't think it worked. People may have enjoyed it, but I didn't think I got that one right, being perfectly honest with you. So find a theme, make sure it's got a pattern, something that joins it all together, and work with it in that regard. Now, the reason why I said there was going to be an exception to this is for my upcoming exhibition, and I, at this point in time, don't know whether this will work, but the venue actually has 2 quite clear areas. So for the larger one, I've picked one theme, which again, it's what I specialise in, it's what I think I'm halfway good at, and that's the music photography side of things. So that's what's going on there, although I've put a focus within that, because although it is, again, bands playing in Swindon, I've, for the majority of the images, focused more on the instruments that people are playing, the tools that I use to create this music and these performances by the individuals. So there's a bit more of a central theme around that. It's not exclusively that, because I thought that would be too narrow a focus. So it's not exclusively that, but there is a heavy presence of that within there. And then, because there was a separate area, I wanted to try something a little bit different, and that is, for the smaller half of it, I'm looking at, debunking the myth of you have to buy the most expensive, newest cameras with the most megapixels, etc., etc. And that's a collection of my work that's basically linked together by the fact that it's taken using older cameras, cheaper cameras, taken on my phone, and that's a separate set of images. I've tried to put some kind of cohesion within those. I don't know whether that bit will work. That's a bit more experimental than my main area. So hopefully it will work as an approach, because it's still quite considered, and I've marketed the actual exhibition on that basis, that it is two exhibitions in one and there's a contrast between them. So I've been quite clear in the communications around that, and it'll be interesting to see which gets the most attention, etc. So, and when you're working through selecting the images for your theme, what you're going to find is that you will have a lot of work, and you've got to try and narrow it down. You've got to narrow it down to a core of images that you like and you think work well together, and that will be a long process. I would strongly recommend printing them out, even if you can't print them out in a large size. What I tend to do to start off with is get them printed out just on 6x4. And just stick them up on a wall with blue tack and move them around and take them off. I save them onto my phone, and every now and again we'll just whip out my phone, have a look, scroll through, make decisions that way, reorder them that way, change what you're looking at, and make sure you are happy with it. I personally don't get anybody else involved in that selection process, but you may want to. That's a call for yourself, but it is important. Give yourself plenty of time to do this, because once you've got this locked in, try not to change it as well. You will, if you're anything like me, go through phases where you absolutely hate what you've selected and you think it's all going to be an utter, unmitigated disaster, and you hate everything that you've created and selected in there, and other times when you absolutely love it and you think it's going to work and it's going to be great. Get used to that if you're anything like me, because you will go through that cycle. Okay, moving on to the third thing, and that is preparation for it. And this is a lot more work than most people think it's going to be. It's very time consuming. Now, the first thing is getting your work printed. First of all, go to a professional printing company to get this done, a company that specialises in professional photographic printing. It is not going to be as cheap as going to somewhere, like Snapfish or somewhere like that. Don't go to them. The end results that you get by going to a professional printing company will be significantly better. Yes, they are dearer, but not massively so. And the quality of the end results really, really is worth it, particularly for your colour work. Your colour work will have a depth, if it's been professionally printed, that you honestly will never get from the likes of Snapfish, etc. And I'm sorry, you won't. It is as simple as that. What a good print house will also do is actually check and colour grade your work for you and make sure that it's good, and will give you the option to reprint it if you're not happy with their output, and that's another big advantage. Also, prep your work for printing as well. Now, I'm not going to go into this in detail here because it's probably the subject of a separate video, but make sure that your brightness and contrast and your colours are good. Try and use a calibrated monitor to make sure that's going to be the case, and also print sharpen your work. Okay, you will need to increase the sharpness if you are printing your work. It will not look as sharp on photographic paper as it does on your screen. So there are a lot of videos around about how to prep your work for printing. Make sure that you do that. It's really important. Now, depending on your funds, you can either get the print house to mount your work or you can mount it yourself. And I do personally think it is important to mount photographs before you frame them. Now, you can go anything, you can go completely mad with this. And if you don't want them framed, you can actually just mount them on board or MDF or polyboard and just stick them straight on the wall. If you're going to be framing them, mount them on card. I personally mount my own work, so I use 3M spray mount and art card stock. I think it's around about 350 gram art card stock, and I mount it on that prior to framing it. And I then also stick another piece of art card the same weight behind the print, just to make sure it's got that rigidity and it's going to stay in place. Oh, I forgot, when it comes to printing as well, one of the other advantages of going to a professional photographic printing house is they will use, or at least offer, archival quality paper. Okay, cheap photographic paper that a lot of the high street internet companies use is not archival quality. Under direct light, over time, it will start to wrinkle and crease, it will lose colour, it just doesn't last. So particularly if you're going to be showing these multiple times, or you plan on selling them at the exhibition, which is obviously something you can consider, make sure that you do that. Now, when it comes to frames, I personally always frame mine using, frames are hideously expensive. You can go as mad as you want here or as cheap as you want. But get something that's decent, get something that's fairly plain and simple as well. So just black or white frames I would recommend depending on the work you're going for. My work, I tend to always go for black frames. And I personally always use plexiglass rather than actual glass. And that's particularly important if you're exhibiting in coffee shops, cafes, pubs, bars, etc. because there's a chance that these could get knocked off of the wall, and the last thing you want is glass going everywhere. So I do tend to mount them in that, but that does come with a compromise. It doesn't last as well as glass and is subject to scratches and abrasions and things like that. When you frame stuff, make sure it's done well and there's no dust or other rubbish in there. Make sure you check the prints before you mount them and before you frame them. Get them framed up. That will take you a lot longer than you think. Also, plan out where you're going to lay things out, what images you're going to put where around the venue. I draw little maps and then put together spreadsheets about what's going to go where and how it's all going to fit together, etc. And that's an important planning part for me, because we'll come on to when you set up in a short while. Now, other things that you will have to prepare as well, you're going to have to prepare some blurb, and I tend to print off and frame just an A4 sheet that explains what the exhibition is about, why you're doing it, who you are as a photographer, tell a bit of a story about the images and why you've brought them together. Put details of your socials on there as well. It's a good idea to generate a cue card for any websites or Facebooks or Instagrams and put those on there, because a lot of people would prefer just to scan that. It's easier to do than it is to type it in and search for it. So putting cue cards on that blurb sheet that you frame up and put somewhere prominent is, I think, always a good move. Also, you will need to prepare cards to go alongside each of your images, and these should explain what the image is, tell a bit of a story or a narrative behind it. If it's for sale, if you are selling it as well... sorry, door went there, so let me Where was I? Yes. If you are planning to sell your work, these little cards that you put underneath the images should also contain details about the image themselves, size, what kind of finish it is, particularly if it's a specialist finish, social gaze, stuff like that, and obviously the price on there. I personally would also put your contact details on there because somebody may like the image but want it in a different size, and if you are open to doing that, you should make sure that that's included on there so that people know that they can contact you and order it in a different size if needs be. Right, so you're prepping everything, you've got your selections done, your venues locked down, etc. Make sure you market it, because nothing will fail quicker than you failing to tell people that you have an exhibition on. So make sure that you are going to promote this. If you're on Facebook events are a really useful way of doing this. Let people know at least 6 weeks in advance that it's coming up, so that they can get everything booked in place if they want to come. Get the event details in there, co-host it with the venue you're using, because the venue will also be able to push out some info around it. The venue themselves may put together some artwork for it and put together some posters and their own promotions around it, but don't just rely on them. Push it out yourself. If you've got an Instagram account, put it on there. If you've got a website, put it on your website, and keep engaging with it, particularly as the event gets closer. What I tend to do is when it's a month away, then when it's a couple of weeks away, then when it's a week away, and then when it's a few days away, etc., etc., make sure that you push info out there about it. You know, as you're framing work up, take a quick photograph of you framing the work up and then post that on there saying, you know, just framed up the A3s, the A2s or whatever, and make sure that goes out to people. So keep communicating, keep pushing it using events, try and get your friends and family to share it and push it out there as well. Because if you don't do that, nobody's going to come along and see your work, okay? Now, if it's in a cafe, a coffee shop, pub or bar, something like that, you're going to get some footfall coming in, which is great. But if you're holding a launch event, and I strongly recommend you do, you're going to want to drive people into that. And the only way you can do that is by actually promoting it. It's not something I'm super comfortable doing myself, but it is an important step to do it. Your exhibition is later that day or maybe the next day, and you've got to go in and set it up. Make sure you take everything you need. Nails, wall hanging, equipment, a hammer, a spirit level, a steel rule, everything you're going to need to hang these pictures, blue tack or whatever you're going to use to stick the vinyls up. Remember that frames sometimes want to wobble a bit off of the wall. What I found is the little sticky pads that you can get. They're dirt cheap on Amazon, little sticky rubbery things. Have I got some just down here? Here they are. So these are, you just peel off each side of them, and I've used them a lot of the times just to make sure that the bottom of frames stay flush against the wall, and they are really handy. They're very, very cheap, but they're extremely useful in that regard. So make sure that you've got everything, take it along with you, get to the venue at the time they say they want you to start setting up, because you might not have a huge amount of time to do it, and it will take more time than you think. Okay, it can be quite arduous, which is why, as I say, drawing out maps, or if you've been given one, using a map you've been given to plan where you're going to put pictures, what's going to go where in advance, works really well. When you get there, unpack all of your frames, put the pictures in the slot that they're going to go, just on the floor in front of that, and then basically start methodically, bang, 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 put them up as you go around. Small wall spaces, nice and easy because you might only be putting 1 or 2 images there. Larger spaces, those are the ones that are going to take time because you've got to position everything in the right place. And for these larger areas, it can pay dividends in advance just to draw out little maps, either on paper, freehand, or using something like PowerPoint or even Photoshop, to plan out exactly where you're going to put everything based on that so that you know what the layout's going to look like. Get everything set up. Stand back, view it from a distance as well. Make sure that you view it from a distance. After you've done that, get your phone out, video it, put it in the post. Let people know, the event post that I talked about, or put it on your socials to let people know that it's been set up. Give them a quick idea of what it's going to look like. It will, again, it's that last minute piece of come along and have a look, everything's here. So try and get that done as well. And then, really, it's just attend the launch event itself. That is the final step. Sit back, have a cup of tea or coffee, have a beer. I would definitely be doing that on this one because it is in a pub, so it'll be an advantage. It's a good pub as well with good beer. But sit back and, when people come in, talk to them. That's the bit I really hate is... despite doing these, I'm not necessarily the most extroverted person, and I don't necessarily like talking about my own work at times. So that to me is always a bit of a challenge, but it is why you've done this in the first place. So yeah, that's hopefully some useful hints on how to basically set up and prepare for running your own exhibition. If any of you have ever exhibited your work before and you've got any other handy hints or tips that I may have missed, please do pop them in the comments down below. If anybody's got any questions about something I might not have covered, again, feel free to ask them down in the comment section below. And if you found this video useful, please do hit the like button, and if you want to see more content like this, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to be notified when new work gets uploaded. Thanks very much, everyone. Take care. Bye.